2 years ago, I tried to commit suicide by, it's a little heavy, but shooting myself in the chest.
The best way to support the show is to subscribe and share. If you haven't left a review or ratings on iTunes, please do. It helps more people find our show. And if you want to be on it, please shoot me a note at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Breanne Davis-Gant. Today, I'm pulling back the curtains of all kinds of human secrets. We'll hear about what people are hiding from themselves and others. You know, those deep, dark secrets that we probably want to go to our deathbed with, or those funnier, lighter secrets that are just plain embarrassing. Really, the how, what, when, where, and why of it all. So today, my guest is Kristin. Now, Kristin, I have a question for you. Dun, dun, dun. What is your secret?
2 years ago, I tried to commit suicide by, it's a little heavy, but shooting myself in the chest.
Yeah, I'm completely blown away that you're sharing it and really grateful. And why? Why did you have that thought to do that 2 years ago?
I was in a dark place, and I think at the time I really didn't realize how serious I had gone down a dark hole. And over time, it just compiled and spiraled. And once you kind of start down that path, it's really hard to dig your way out, especially if you're not completely aware of how deep you're getting. It's hard to ask for help. It's hard to navigate. And I think once my brain got there and fixated on that as the viable solution, I'm a pretty driven, determined person, to the point where at this point it's kind of a fault of mine that it got to that extent. But fortunately, I missed, and here I am today.
Now, I do want to talk about those moments leading up to that decision. Was there things that happened? You said, you keep going. Did you realize you were in a dark place, or can you tell us what was happening before?
Sure. On the outside, from what I've been told from family and friends and my ex-partner at the time, I was going about my days as normal. I had a lot on my plate. I had a full-time job. My ex and I were running a restaurant full-time. We had a house and animals and, car payments. And I think everything compiling on top of each other. I just didn't have any outlet. I didn't have any self-care, wasn't in my vocabulary. And as the stress and reality of everything, sat on my shoulders, and then as my relationship diminished, it just sat heavier and heavier. And I think back then I had the view that my back was against the wall and I didn't know where to turn. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is it's a hard thing to acknowledge and ask for help. And I think for a while I didn't even know I needed help. I think I just thought I needed to kind of grit my teeth and fight my way through it. And if I was, failing myself and failing everyone in my life, and my brain just thought, what is this? What is the way to get out of this? What is the best solution for everyone and for me? And once I kind of had that idea, it's almost like my brain latched on, fixated on it, and then went from there. Not to scare people, but I meticulously planned all of it. And when I look back at the things that I chose to do and the way I planned it, it's almost a little terrifying. I was scared of myself when I actually acknowledged it after I survived and went through treatment and stuff. It was a hard pill to swallow that I was capable of that. I still have days where I'm reminded of my ability to plan that and go through with it. So a lot happened. It compiled, and once it started the ball rolling, it was really hard for me to stop it. And I don't even think my brain wanted to.
I think it's really fascinating because you said how your life on the outside looked so great, and you had this facade, and we wear these masks and we don't know what people are hiding behind them. And you said, you're so driven that you planned it. Mm-hmm. How long did you plan it?
I think when I kind of nailed down the timeline, I really didn't start planning it until about 2 weeks before. I think it was a situation where, on bad days, the thought kind of went in and out, but it never really latched and stuck. It was more of what they call a passive ideation. And when it got about 2 weeks before my attempt, it really transitioned from passive to active, where I was, thinking, how could I successfully, in my mind, it was really, how could I successfully complete this task? And how could I do it? I remember thinking that I wanted to do it with the least impact on my family and my friends, because again, from the outside, I have a very supportive family. I have, at the time I had a partner, I had a great staff at my restaurant. I had a lot of friends. I was very social in town, and I wanted to be able to tell my story after the fact. So, I mean, when I say I planned, I wrote letters, I wrote a will, I got the will notarized. I went above and beyond because I wanted everything to be taken care of. I knew it was a burdensome event and that it would have a big impact, but I wanted to find a way to almost smooth the edges and explain to the people that I care about why I did this, because I think there was a part of me that knew that people were worried about me, but they had no idea what I was capable of. And so I felt like to do something so abrupt to them, I wanted to at least have some sort of explanation for them to reference.
That's so interesting. It was almost like you were so driven to not perfectionist, but to have it all planned out and organized that it's when you're talking about it, it seems like it was a task and you are so disconnected from actually what you were doing.
Yeah, I was so disconnected from reality. And going through therapy now, I've been working on the fact that I was very good at stuffing emotions, not acknowledging them and just moving past them. But over time, all that did was tighten me up, build it up until it exploded. I look back and I think about how my schedule was and, working during the day and going to the bar all night and running, having a home life. I would just cram as much responsibility into a day as I physically could so that I could avoid the emotional side of everything I was doing. And that's where it led.
Yeah, you avoid feeling, and those feelings have nowhere to go except in your body. I remember when my therapist told me, if you have these feelings that you don't feel, it's like one on top of the other and they get stored in your body. And sooner or later, that trash can or lid is going to explode because
absolutely
your body cannot contain feelings, or it turns into a disease. But it also, what you're talking about is what, drugs and alcohol and addicts do. They are just killing themselves slowly. And you were like, no, I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to plan it perfectly. And then I'm just going to do it the easiest way for my family and friends.
Yeah. And I thought for me too, that it's morbid to think about, but I remember thinking how could I do this? I hate to say easiest, but I don't have another word, the quickest, most effective way. I'm a person that strives for efficiency. I mean, it's good and it's a bad, trait to have. It's great in my professional life. But yeah, in my personal life, it wasn't the best choice.
Do you think I identify with something you said, but the driven? Are you always so driven that anything you accomplish or do is never enough? If you reach a task, you go, I do that too. And it's actually,
it's hard to shake.
Oh my God. I am like, why do I have to be so driven? Why can't I just be okay with whatever is? I always have to set these bars, and it's exhausting.
And it's not always about being better than other people for me. It's just I set myself on a task and I want to complete it and I want to feel good about how I complete it. But no matter what the case is, I never feel satisfied. I always look back, and instead of being proud of the things that I did, I go, well, I could have done it this way.
Yeah. It's that perfectionist driven. Okay. So that makes me I understand that, but why? And I'm just going to bluntly ask you, I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm going to ask you, why shooting yourself in the chest? Why did you choose that?
I wanted it to be fast. And I remember, the fall before, so I attempted suicide in April, and the fall prior to that, my mom, who is 50, I know she's 55, has early onset Alzheimer's. And I remember thinking about, and her and my stepfather live in the same city I do. We live in Syracuse. My other parents don't live here. And I remember thinking about them having to identify me. And I remember gruesomely thinking in my head that if I shot myself in the head, what would that do to them? My mom was already at a place where she can't comprehend a lot of reality anymore. It's very skewed. And I just couldn't do it to her. I didn't know what that would look like. And I just remember thinking like that wasn't even an option. I remember it coming through my head and me being like, nope, we're not doing it that way. And I just thought, well, what would be the next? I mean, there was only really two options in my head. So I tried the other one, and yeah.
Okay. So that moment, we're about to get a little dark, if that's
Sure.
Okay. And everybody like that moment when was like in the morning, like what was the thought process?
So I had struggled with it. It was a Monday. I had struggled with it the prior weekend. I tried to numb out and not think about it and avoid my feelings. So I went out all weekend with friends, and I was staying at my friend's apartment downtown, and my car was in the parking garage next door. And this was all right around the corner from my business, like very familiar with the area. I woke up in the morning and it was just in my head. I was like, I can't procrastinate it anymore. So I went in the parking garage and sat in my car for at least 2 hours. I remember because it was cold, and I don't remember those 2 hours. It felt like 5 minutes. And I sat there looking out the back of my SUV, and I had the shotgun wedged against the rear door pointed at me. And I sat there when I isolated the timeline, it was roughly 2 hours. And like I said, it didn't feel that long. And my friend who I was staying with was a student at the university here and a customer of mine, and we became really good friends, but he's from Saudi Arabia. And he started looking for me. And I could tell that because I had my cell phone next to me playing music, and it was going off like crazy. And that's when I knew, basically in my head, it was kind of like, this is the countdown, because if I don't soon, people are going to find me and stop me. And I knew they were looking for me. The cops started calling my phone. I was like, oh, they're going to track it. And my friend actually, I remember him pulling his Jeep past me, and he saw my car and he stopped. And as soon as I like solidified in my head that was him, I thought that was the moment that someone would stop me, and I pulled the trigger.
Oh, wow.
And I remember like I must have blacked out. And then I remember coming to, and all I could hear was the music playing on my cell phone, but I couldn't see anything. So I was trying to move my right arm because my left arm couldn't move. And I remember moving around and just feeling blood and trying to find my phone. And then I found my phone, finally pushed the button on it, but it couldn't read my thumb, probably because of the blood. And I remember trying to dial 911. I misdialed, so I dialed again. And when I spoke to the 911 operator, as soon as she asked me my name and I said it, she knew it, because after the fact, I found out they were already looking for me. They had already reported me missing. So the next thing I remember is them shattering the windows of my car and dragging me out. And then I remember when they pulled me out of the ambulance to take me into the hospital, I remember hearing my partner at the time scream. And after the fact, I found out that my grandfather and my partner were driving around downtown looking for me, because they knew the cops had told them that they pinged my cell phone down there. And so they were looking for me. And then they told me later that when they got downtown, they heard the ambulance. They couldn't see it, but they were just asking pedestrians or anyone on the street, where was the ambulance? And they followed me to the hospital. So when I was being transported into the hospital, they saw me.
Wow. That must have been really hard for them.
Yeah, it's something that I've never really talked to them about. They've never really been receptive to having that conversation, and I will never push it.
I can understand that. So you get to the hospital. What actually did you hit? Did you hit your?
I hit my lung. My lung collapsed. I broke some ribs in my collarbone. I have an entry and exit wound, so it went straight through. I was in the hospital for close to a month overall. I think I was like in the ICU for 2 to 3 weeks. It was obviously painful. I, for the most of my life, have been a fairly healthy person, never experienced much physical, like surgeries or pain or anything. It took a while for them to clear all of everything out of my lung and get it reinflated and get me breathing properly. I had a couple tubes and stuff. And and so then the only other part I remember is at one point being in the ER and my ex like wiping me down and saying that she needed to clean me up and cover me up so that my mom could see me and not be affected by like the actual physical trauma. But I don't even remember my mom coming in. I remember that blip and that's it. And then the next thing I remember is waking up in the ICU, like surrounded by my family.
I know you and I like how grateful you are that you survived. When you did do it and you were reaching around for your phone and you said your fingers were bloody, so you couldn't swipe your phone. Did you have that thought like, I want to survive?
Yes. And it was a combination of that. It was a combination of that and pain. I think just the two things. I was like, I remember being shocked that I even felt the pain. I think I just assumed that I would hit my heart and it would be quick and I wouldn't even comprehend what happened. Whereas in fact, it was the opposite. And I remember being like, holy crap. Like,
holy shit is what you want to
Yeah. And, I just remember being shocked and then, just pain. I'm pretty sure I yelled at all the EMTs, not in a mean way, just like telling them how much pain I was in. But I remember being shocked that I even like could feel it and could even move my other arm to find my phone and was like using my phone. I mean, when I think about the sequence of events, it's almost unbelievable to me still.
Yeah, it's unbelievable hitting your lung that you actually survived because you even setting and telling me how it happened. The likelihood of you to survive that and be here today 2 years later is just a miracle.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask about the 7 deadly sins. I know some people think they're religious and they are, but I like to look at them as character defects for human behavior. So we have pride, greed, lust, gluttony, envy, anger, and sloth. When you decided to have this secret and act it out, where of those sins were connected and why?
So I think there's really 3 that stick with me. I think part of it is pride. I didn't know, and it's not intentional pride. I think it's pride in the sense that I didn't know how to ask for help. And I think that I felt like I had so much going on that asking for help in any capacity would have been viewed as a weakness. And I think that was my own issue. It wasn't anything that anybody was doing to me or saying to me externally. It was just my own problem.
I always I think that's true. People think asking for help is weakness and it's actually powerful. Like when I finally asked for help and said something is wrong, I felt weak, but it was actually this very freeing moment.
Yeah. And I think I've learned that now. I think now that I'm learning more about myself and my emotions and my emotional and physical reactions to stress and anxiety, that it's given me a whole new perspective. I mean, something as stupid as, so I now struggle with PTSD post attempt. And one thing that's actually really hard for me is fireworks. And so this weekend, we were down at the Jersey Shore, and of course there's fireworks everywhere. And on Saturday night, I told my partner, I was like, I'm just going to stay in the house. And like, I don't even want to go outside. And I put headphones on and watched a movie on my phone as loud as I could. And I got to the point where I still was struggling. So I remember asking her, like, one of my things that helps me is Sour Patch Kids. It sounds so stupid.
No,
but now
it
when I'm
doesn't.
having like an anxiety attack or like, you know, a physical anxiety, I always want to eat Sour Patch Kids. And
I always want to have like a cupcake. Like it's like a comfort thing.
It is a comfort thing. And so I ate a whole bag of Sour Patch Kids. So I think now I'm finding a new strength in asking for help, but it's a process. And I think the hardest thing maybe for me has just been, I'm like this efficiency brain where I'm like, well, this is how you do it and this is how you're going to do it forever. And the change of, you know, my emotions and my physical reaction to my emotions and things has been an evolving learning process for me. And I think just acknowledging that for me is my hardest thing. I think I find a solution to, you know, my anxiety one day and I think it's going to work, but then the next time it may not. So I have to find new ways to ask for help. I think back to your question, another one for me was I had a misconception of sloth. I felt like I was never doing enough. I had so much on my plate that I felt like I was falling short in every capacity. And if you ask people who knew me, they would tell you the exact opposite. They were like, no, you were killing it. You were running your bar. You were behind the bar every night. You were running a credit union during the day with staff. And, you know, you have a house that you're redoing and, you know, go down the list. People had a different perspective than I did. And I felt like I just couldn't keep up. I felt like I was spreading myself so thin that I didn't feel like I was successful in any capacity. And I think that stuck with me for a really long time. And I'm still working on that. I'm trying to not take on as much as quickly as I did in the past. I still realize that I need a lot of different outlets in my life and I have a lot of different interests that I'm not the type of person that I can just, you know, go to a 9 to 5, come home, hang out at home. And that's enough for me. I know I need more than that, but I have to scale it up at a level that is appropriate and that I can handle.
Yeah.
And kind of learn as I'm doing that. So I feel like those were the two biggest things when I look back on kind of where my mindset was that really stuck with me.
I love that you said that because it's that balance. It's that balance of an overachiever, but also just like being okay. Yeah. It's that stillness that we have to find the middle ground. Right. So I definitely identify with that. And, you know, holding on to this and going through with it, who do you think it harmed and who do you think it benefited?
It harms anyone who knew me. Mostly, I think it harmed my partner at the time. I think that it really shattered a lot of the things that she thought we had. And she holds, I don't know if she still holds, but she held a lot of guilt around it. It also shattered my family. My mom doesn't really have an understanding of what happened, but my grandparents are here. And my grandparents and my stepdad take care of her. And I think all of them had so much stress and so much on their plate dealing with my mom's disease that on top of it was a lot for them. On the flip side, I think being 2 years out of it now, the difference is that it's caused us to grow closer. I really, up into my attempt, had distanced myself from a lot of people. Part of it was my schedule, but I really wasn't close with my family. It was really, I think the hard part for me was my partner was closer with my family than me. And now, I mean, I'm in a new relationship, but I am a lot closer with my grandmother. I see my mom on a regular basis. And before, I was really distancing myself, I think because I was struggling so much with my own stuff that seeing my mom just added to it. And I feel guilty even saying that, but it was a hard thing to process and or still process, but I think I shattered them the most. But like I said, in the reverse, 2 years out, we're closer than we've ever been. And it's opened up a lot of communication within our family too. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of our family from the outside looking in looked very, you know, successful, put together. We essentially had everything we needed. And when I look at it through the lens, looking back now, we really didn't communicate about real things. You know, it was kind of those update conversations. What's going on in your life? What's going on in ours? Because a lot of my family lives all over the country. And now it's a more real conversation about, you know, what's going on in each other's lives, you know, how are we feeling about things? How are we handling things? Is there ways that we can help each other, support each other? And so I'm fortunate that that's how we've reacted, and it hasn't driven anyone further apart.
You know, and I have to say, sometimes through the darkest moments, that's when the light comes. And I think for me too, when going through my darkest time, now I'm closer to everyone in my family also.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to walk through that to get to the other side, or you just stay in this disconnected way of society. And I love that you said that. And my last question for you, how are you moving forward now in the future?
Day by day. I am in I'm still in a therapy program. So I was fortunate. I was fortunate that here in Syracuse, there's a hospital that has a program dedicated to suicidality. And it's like a good thing and a bad thing. It's great because they've seen some significant success rates in their program over the last decade. The sad part is there's not a lot of programs like it in the country. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through. It's a year program. So that has definitely had an impact. It's once a week. It's more intense than just a traditional talk therapy. And it's more geared towards addressing and acknowledging your emotions, you know, really identifying what they are and how you're feeling about whatever's happening in your life, and then processing it from there. Immediately after my attempt, once I was out of the hospital, I actually moved to Boston for treatment for a few months. And that was more like practical skills, like coping mechanisms when things happen in the immediate. And now I've moved past that, and this program is more longer term. How can I, you know, function and acknowledge my emotions and balance out my life a little bit better, and not have, I guess, a drastic reaction or go down what I call is like my rabbit hole, where I like isolate and spiral again. So that has really helped. I sometimes I'm a little nervous about what happens at the end of that. You know, my therapist and I are working on what options there are, but that's definitely step one. I think the other thing that has helped me move forward is back to what you said about bringing people together. I think the acknowledgement of also losing people because of the event, and kind of reevaluating the people in my life, and not in a negative way, just more, okay, who are my support systems and who can I also provide support to if needed? I mean, I've talked to, you know, a handful of people about my experience. It's not something quite yet where I've gone public, but I am actually filing this week to run for public office next year. So
that's great.
Yeah. So it's kind of something where my campaign manager and I have been toying with this for a few months. Like, how do we approach the topic, and, you know, what I want to do with it. And I think now I'm finally getting more comfortable discussing it outside of my personal circle. That is helping me process it too. I think just thinking and talking about the ways I've changed, the things I've learned, it makes me more confident and more comfortable. So I think that's been a huge step forward for me. Beyond that, I think moving forward, I really just want to do things like this. I want to talk about it. I want people to know that they're not alone. They're not the only people feeling that way. And that no matter what secrets you hold or what dark corners you have inside you, that it's okay to have those. You just have to work through them and find avenues of support. And I don't necessarily know where those all are, but I think just talking about it is step one.
Yeah, talking about it, it takes away the shame and the alone.
Yeah.
It literally immediately takes it away from you, where you can't hold it anymore by yourself. And there's something so freeing and powerful to do that.
Yeah.
Where it almost makes it difficult. Like the mirror's in front of you and you have to look at it.
Yeah. And it's scary. I think getting to that point
it's the worst. It's
terrifying.
So scary.
Yeah. You can talk yourself out of it in 300 different ways. But once you do it, like you said, it's so freeing that you just feel more authentic, and you feel like, you know what, here I am, and you can judge me any way you want. but this is who I am, and I'm not going to try and like mask it anymore. I'm not going to try and stuff it down and be the person that I think everyone around me wants me to be. And I think that was the hardest thing for me. I was striving to be all of these different people and all the different facets of my life that I lost a lot of myself. I lost what I cared about and what I loved. And I just kept chugging forward. And I think the greatest thing is everybody's uniqueness and really like embracing what we're interested in, who we are, what we stand for, all those things, and being those people. And I think it's just getting harder and harder. We're bombarded by so much in society and so much information that it's hard. And I look at like some of my little cousins and stuff, and I'm just like, it's hard. It's hard if I ever have kids. I can't imagine what it's like for you to have a kid and be like, be you, forget what everyone else around here is saying.
I know, but that's the only way I can teach him now. You know, the only way is you can never fulfill what you think other people want of you. You have to be you, or you're going to live a life that is not even worth living, like you said. So thank you so much for sharing your secret and your story.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And until next time, guys, bye. Thank you again for listening to Secret Life Podcast. Please subscribe, share, send me a note, and you can always support the show with a donation on our site, secretlifepodcast.com. Until next time, bye.